They flew down. He's over in his holler. I think I'm gonna sneak up the creek bottom. I got about 100 yards to play with right here. I'll give him just a minute. But it kind of sounds like he's going up that ridge over there. So the bird flew down. But he flew down and went up a public ridge. I'm gonna circle up around this ridge on my backside here and get up on his level. I just heard him gobble one more time up there. So he's not saying much now that he's on the ground. I was about 75 yards from him this morning. I just hoping he'd fly down right here. Tried to do a few little light tree yelps. But anyways, I'm gonna circle up and get on his level and just listen for him. One goblin down here, one goblin to my left. was right under that bird at daylight. He flew down in the holler to my right instead of to me. And he took off. And him and another bird, they stayed a couple hundred yards apart, but they moved in the same direction. I followed them over 2 ridges and through 2 creek bottoms. Just kind of like, they were kind of staying right with the private and public line, but most of the time they were on public. And about an hour ago, the last spot where I set up on them and called to them, that one was just right over, I was on the finger ridge, and he was right over the lip. All he had to do was pop up over the lip and come about 15 yards. But he didn't budge, but he would answer me every time. Anyways, they moved off, and I know they're on private now. But I'd heard another bird back up in here at some point while I was chasing them off in the distance. So that's why I'm up in here right now. I'm in a good listening spot. So I haven't heard a gobble in like an hour, and I'm just going to sit here and hopefully want to fire back up later. I'm in North Carolina this morning. I'm on the National Forest. I'm right up on the private line right now. I brought my boy in here last year for youth season, and there were a bunch of birds right here. We came in here 3 or 4 times after the same bird, and he was roosted in the same spot every time. He'd fly down onto this open private land knoll every time and never would step back across the line. But he's not in here right now. There's another bird 300-400 yards away on private to my left, and it could be him. But I'm gonna sit here a little bit longer. Maybe call at him a couple times if I hear him again, and if not, I'm gonna get up and get out of here and go get some work done at home. So after I shot, the bird rolled back towards the line, and I went down there and picked him up real quick, and I have walked almost all the way out before I stopped to do an after interview. I did not want to mess with the private landowners down there. They're always down there. They're usually got their trucks parked about 500 yards from that knoll where he was strutting and spinning and gobbling at. I didn't want to deal with them. I know I shot it on the public, but them hearing the gunshot down there, they probably thought that somebody shot him off the knoll that he's always on right there.
So I've hunted him. This makes the 7th time I've hunted this bird. I hunted him 6 times last year, and he had a hen with him every time. But he'd go to that knoll and he'd stand there and he'd strut and he'd gobble, but he wouldn't come to you because he always had hens with him. He wasn't roosted where he normally was. He was like 300 or 400 yards away, and I almost turned around when I heard him gobble way off in the distance. That one time I was like, I'll never pull this bird that far off that primo private land and kill him. And I almost just left without even calling. I was like, well, I got things to do today. I'll just get on out of here. I know I'm not going to kill that bird. He's not roosted close. Well, he didn't have a hen with him this morning. Before I left, I just called one time, stood there about 5 minutes, and I heard him gobble, and he was a lot closer that time. So then I kind of sat down, got set up, and the next time he gobbled, he was close. And he came in when the first time I saw him, he was only 20 yards on my to my left, but I could have shot him, but I couldn't have got it on film. I couldn't have reached over and grabbed the camera. He went through a shooting lane to my left. He was like 20 yards on the public at that point, and he walked and crossed onto the private and got onto that little grassy knoll there and started strutting and drumming. I'm tickled to death. This is my first really good national forest, Pisgah National Forest turkey. I've only killed a jake on the Pisgah. I've always had a lot of trouble there. The birds are, when I find them, they're always off on the private. Never can get them to come. But today, it worked out. Those last 2 weeks of the season in North Carolina are always my best. And if you're going to be able, if you can't find birds and they've always been on the private, go back there the late season and just try them. He might be lonely like this guy right here. I never would have thought he'd have broke and crossed that line into the woods, but he did, and here he lays.